Welcome to sportsbookreview.com. I'm Flash, and on the back of a very successful series with March into Madness, NCAAB, and we've got the guru, Maxwell Smart. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, Flash. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm glad to be talking some college basketball. It's been a very exciting off season, albeit changed from a recruiting standpoint, but free agency in college basketball is going just like normal. I'm getting ready for the season. I'm getting excited. I want a March Madness this coming season because we all know that that was ripped from my arms and ripped right out of my heart.
Yeah, I mean, most people worry about being in isolation, but you, no. It's a normal day for you, and I hope that you've been using that time so it's going to benefit all of us.
Oh, absolutely. I have a bunch of teams that I want to talk about, and I'm excited to just get started and get talking with you, Flash.
Well, let's do it. Let's get it on. Because the first thing, is it too early to find contenders? Because that's where we earn our money. I want contenders, Max.
I think that with contenders early on in the season, I think that when you look at teams with a lot of continuity and minimal off-season turnover, I think those are the types of teams in this type of year with COVID-19 that are going to be most consistent and best for your bankroll. I have about 6 teams that I've narrowed on and really started to focus on because I think that they are going to present a lot of betting value to me personally and to everybody that watches SBR. Specifically, the first one I'm going to talk about is Wisconsin. We know what Wisconsin did last year. They did have some controversy with Kobe King leaving because of some racial comments made by the strength and conditioning staff. But I think that news is behind them, and I think that the outlook is very positive. When you bring in Nate Roovers and Micah Potter, both double-digit point-per-game scorers, you have 2 tangible pieces in the front court that is going to give a lot of teams in the Big Ten trouble. I think when you bring back your point guard in Brad Davison, who has been a 4-year senior, I think that just gives you a lot more bravado. This is a guy who plays with emotion. This is a guy who gets the crowd involved, and he's not afraid to get on the floor to make a defensive play. I think that Wisconsin is going to be feared in the Big Ten, and I think that Wisconsin is going to benefit all of our bankrolls.
Yeah, and we're obviously going to get a big price about them as well because they're not one team that I was actually expecting to come out of your mouth first. Give me some other ones.
Yeah, I think that Villanova definitely has to stand out. They're only losing Sadiq Bey. We saw this year a great step forward by Justin Moore and Jermaine Samuels, both being able to average double digits in the starting lineup. I think that's really going to come down to what kind of production you get out of guys on the bench like Brian Antoine and Chris Arcidiacono. These are guys that are expected to be offensive contributors in this Villanova depth system, and I think that the one X factor that we have to talk about is the Tulane redshirt sophomore transfer Caleb Daniels. This is a guy who averaged 17 points at Tulane, and I think that playing at that kind of level in the American Athletic Conference is going to have him prepared quite well to adjust to the Big East, and I think that he's going to be a significant contributor. If that is the case, Villanova is a national championship contender.
Wow. I mean, a lot of people they're big fans of Nova anyway. Give me some of your others.
Yeah, with Virginia, that's the shirt that I'm wearing today. I got to show love to Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett has done a great job of recruiting, especially this year, bringing in Jabri Abdur-Rahim and Reese Beekman, who are both the 33rd and 46th respected recruit in the nation. The X factor for this team is you lose Mamadi Diakate, but you gain Sam Hauser from Marquette, who averaged 15 points and 7 rebounds. He is the all-around package with a year training and learning the Virginia defense. I expect this version of Virginia to be very explosive on offense and to be their normal stout defense, which will increase our bankroll if we're on unders in their games. And of course, I think that they're going to be quite dominant and they're going to be good to us ATS again this year.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing about Virginia last year was obviously the unders, because they absolutely strangled teams. Now, if they can get an offense going as well and scoring points, then they won't be sitting in them little tight, horrible games, but they come out on top, and they seem to get it together on the back end of the season as well, Max.
Oh, absolutely. They were red hot at the end of the season, and it was really a disservice to that squad to not get an opportunity to play in March. And I think that this year, Tony Bennett will have the guys that are back, motivated and ready to go. I look forward to it.
Okay, so you give us Nova, you give us Virginia, but obviously we're hoping that they wake up, and Wisconsin, which is really left field. Give me a couple of others.
Yeah, quickly I'll say Houston. So Houston has done a great job of really building a roster, building a program, and really attracting some of the homegrown talent in the state of Texas. I think that when you look at Caleb Mills and Marcus Sasser, these are the guys that I expect to take significant step forwards from a production standpoint. When I look at what is returning in Nate Hitton Jr. and DeJean Jarreau, these are guys that are long, athletic, get on the glass, play two-way basketball, and that's what Coach Calvin Sampson wants. This is a Houston team that is going to be tough to beat at home. It's just a question if they can translate that to the road. If Cameron Tyson, the Idaho redshirt sophomore transfer who averaged 14 points per game, can come in and give you maybe 7 to 9, I think that this Houston team is going to be a 10, 11-man team, 11-man deep team, and nobody in the American is going to be able to stand up to them.
And on paper, they would be left field as well, wouldn't they?
They would be left field, but they're still in my top 15 early season rankings. So it's not really out of left field. It's just going to be very strange to talk about a team from the American having that much hype about them, because let's be frank, there's only been one American Athletic Conference team that has done what Houston wants to do this year, and that's the UConn Huskies. So Houston has definitely the roster to do so, and they have the coaching. So put those two together, you have a very dangerous weapon.
Yeah, we like that, and we'll definitely be on that. Now, that's the positives. Now, what about the negatives? How many of them teams? Oh, it's a double-pronged question. You know that I love throwing things at you because you are the font of all knowledge. There's no one I'd like more to speak to in the world than the guru. Now, the teams that were at the top, or because obviously it was so wide open last year, who is going to be the team to suffer? What teams are not going to be as good next year?
Well, I think that we got to talk about two teams, one team that you and I know quite well, and that being Maryland. Maryland's going to have problems next year. You lose Anthony Cowan, you lose Jalen Smith. Those are 31 points per game that you have to replace. I don't think that the guys that they have left in Eric Ayala, Daryl Morcell, and Aaron Wiggins and Dante Scott have the fortitude to be able to pick up that slack. I think Maryland's in for a down year, but they do have a good recruiting class coming in 2021. And another team that's quite obvious flash is going to be Dayton. You lose Obi Toppin, one of the best players in college basketball this past season, but you also lose Trey Landers and Ryan McSell. It's the same situation here where you are significantly weakened in your front court scoring, and it puts just a lot of pressure that I don't think is going to work well with guys like Jalen Crutcher, Dwayne Cohell, and Rodney Chapman. So those are two teams right off the bat that I think that are going to have diminished expectations. And the two others are teams that we watched and talked about a lot last year, one being Seton Hall. Seton Hall loses Mal Powell. They do get Bryce Aiken and Takai Molson from Canisius, but let's be frank. When graduate transfers move on to another school, they're not going to bring that same kind of production. They're starting off at the bottom of the hierarchy, and they got to work their way into those minutes that they had. And I think Bryce Aiken in the Big East is going to have a little more trouble scoring than he did in the Ivy.
Is it just obvious, and we are obviously just looking at it and going, when a team loses senior players, that's it? I mean, that's such a negative.
Listen, seniors are very important. We have to be frank about this. there's no shame in being in school for 4 years. And we have a lot of guys that have shown the ability and why that's true. Recent years, seniors have reclaimed their roles as stars and as the guys of the program. And the truth of the matter is, programs don't win national championships without them. Losing a star player, though, is not a death sentence. Being the face of a program is, of course, more than leading your team in points and being the focal point of the defensive game plan. But it really takes good coaching and determination on the player to get to that level. And with the parity that exists today, it is possible for players to climb to this status. So losing a player like that is not going to kill you. I will say this, though. When a school loses the star of their program, it doesn't necessarily mean that their success will take a step backward. All teams hope that the culture that they've cultivated would allow them to continue or even elevate their success when the face of the program's graduated. We look at some of the guys that have left this year, and we watched and saw their contributions, and we know how important seniors are because look at Cassius Winston from Michigan State. Look at Anthony Cowan from Maryland, Marcus Howard from Marquette, and then some of the mid-major guys, Sam Merrill from Utah State, literally got his team to the national championship tournament with that win against San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference. Jordan Ford from St. Mary's, Anthony Lamb from Vermont. These are guys that were seniors, played their way through the program, learned the system, maximized their effort. And Flash, the way that teams adapt to the loss of a special senior is simple. We all know it. Recruit, hit the transfer market. Use your state's appeal to keep the homegrown talent in state. Find graduate transfers that you can plug a hole, and find underclassmen that are going to get experience, get stronger, get acclimated to the college game and speed and systems.
I hear redshirted, or the players been redshirted quite a bit with obviously the younger players. How and what is redshirting?
Yeah, redshirting is basically when there isn't going to be any rotation minutes for that player. Instead of burning a year of eligibility, what they'll do is they'll give them a year to basically practice with the team, adapt to the college lifestyle, get in the weight room and get stronger, and then be able to contribute in the following season. It's a good strategy for guys that can recruit players that they think that they can develop more than they were rated coming out of high school.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. And that's brilliant because they're actually going to get to know the routes. They're going to get to know each other. They're going to be able to play. And yet they've had a year of practicing. I mean, I've seen this a lot with Clemson in the NCAAF because they had 60 players that were redshirted. And I think that's going to hold them in great stead because obviously the newcomers that are coming into all the other schools are not going to have the time because obviously of the pandemic, they're not going to be able to fit in. So I think that redshirting can be a massive bonus. Now, last year, or the March Madness, was heading to be one of the most open tournaments and championships we'd seen for many a year. Are we going to see the same again next year?
I think that this is going to be the natural, normal effect of college basketball. With the G League program going to gain traction in coming years, we're going to see less of the premier five-star talent spend more than 1 year in college. And I think that this year it will be way more wide open just because of some of the more dominant programs and what they've already lost. I spoke about Seton Hall. I spoke about Maryland. I mentioned Utah State, St. Mary's. All of these teams are going to take a step backwards this coming year. And I think that the teams that are going to have the most advantage are the teams with minimal turnover, good on-court chemistry and continuity, and at least in the early season, that's going to be something that you can work on in your capping to isolate teams that are going to be positive for your bankroll. It's key to remember, though, that players and teams grow as the season unfolds. There are 3 seasons within the 1 season in college basketball, and that's why it's critical to take into consideration these unfamiliar circumstances of the offseason and how stable a program has to be to compete with these blue bloods that are having major roster turnover.
So are we still going to see like the Zags and Baylor and San Diego and Kansas? We're still going to see them ranked high, but maybe it's a false ranking.
I don't think it's going to be a false ranking. I think that with teams specifically, like you mentioned, Baylor and Gonzaga are going to return enough pieces after the NBA draft to definitely put a top 5, top 10 national program in the rankings. I do think, however, a team like San Diego State, who's losing Malachi Flynn but gaining Terrell Gomez, is not going to be able to have the sustained success that they did last year. I think that a lot of teams definitely got the short end of the stick by March Madness being canceled. And unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do about that. We just have to move on to the next season, though.
No, because I think a lot of them were thinking that that was their opportunity of maybe being one and done. Now, let's go forward and find me a small school under the radar that you think will outperform.
Yeah, I definitely have a bunch of these teams. This is definitely what I like to focus on during the early April, May months of the off season. And I have one today that I want to discuss with you is the Austin Peay Governors out of the Ohio Valley Conference. We know what Austin Peay did last year. They were 21-12. They were 14-4 in the OVC, and they were very beneficial to your bankroll when they were playing at home and when the odds makers favored them. We're talking about a team that was 13-5-2 ATS as a favorite, 8-3 ATS at home. That's all a healthy bankroll to make off one team during the college basketball season. They do return their scoring duo of Terry Scary Taylor and Jordan Adams, who combined to average 38 points per game. I think that with Carlos Paez, you're going to take a step forward from him production-wise. He's your point guard. He's your floor general. And as he gets more confident driving the basketball with his left and right hand instead of just going to the right side, he is going to be a lot more effective. I think that the X factor for Austin Peay is going to be Reginald G. He only played 6 games last year, but this is a guy that hits his free throws, can make a 3-point shot, and is going to give you double-digit points and understands the system. They did also bring in 2 JUCO guys, Murdy Mongazi, who's a 7-footer, and it never hurts to have a 7-footer in a mid-major conference. Size usually wins. And then they brought in Elton Walker, who is like a shooting guard, small forward combination. And he's the type of guy that can bring a lot of energy, plays very good on-ball perimeter defense. And you're going to need that because the defenses are going to be focused on Taylor and Adams. You need some guys to step up. I think Austin Peay is going to challenge Murray State for the OVC Conference Championship, and they're going to reward us with some nice winning plays.
So they're individual winning plays. Are we looking at the likes of Austin Peay having enough to challenge the big guns?
I think that if it comes down to them making the national championship, I think that they'll be in for a serious step up in competition. But based on how they've scheduled the last couple years in the non-conference, they'll prepare themselves, but they won't overdo themselves or try to have the program embarrassed. I think that in the Ohio Valley Conference, they are going to have a stout enough competition to be able to really hone in and show their validity. But against a team like Baylor or a team like Gonzaga, I think that they get blown out by double digits.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to have to stop there because there's so much more I want to ask you. So maybe we'll make that into another show. Now, brilliant work, but you're only a quarter of the way through. So now you've got to get your head down. You've got to go and find some more facts, figures, signings, people leaving, so that when we do the next show, we can put a little bit more meat on the bone as we close in on the college basketball season. Max, isolation for you, even when the lockdown's lifted, it's still in place for you, okay?
Absolutely, Flash. I'll be working hard and I'll be finding those names and those teams.
Yeah, there's no one better than you, and I'll go on record and say that. You are the #1 man in any sport around the world, and I just love working with you, and I look forward to doing it again soon. So if you like this video, then please subscribe, press the bell, and then we'll let you know, and you won't miss any time that Max comes on and shares his vision, his knowledge, and everything else. Max, you take care, and I'll see you again soon.
All right, thanks, Flash. Take care, bud.
Brilliant. Maxwell Smart, the guru of college basketball. We'll see you again soon. You take care.